morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on when you are listening to this. This is the WBBL review, and I'm delighted that you are here with me today. Before we get started in episode 2, I just want to say a huge thank you to everyone who has shared, liked, commented on the posts and on anything on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. Really do appreciate it, so keep that coming, please. Because today, very special episode 2, focused on kind of the impact of the coronavirus with the Sheffield Hatters. And I've got 3 very special guests for you today. Later on we will be hearing from Helen Naylor, who can give us a perspective of kind of this season as she's playing for the Manchester Mystics. But before we get Helen on, we are going to invite Sarah McQueen, who is one of the trustees at Sheffield Hatters and has been for many years, and we are going to invite Naomi Campbell, one of the players who again has been at Sheffield for many years. So I'm delighted to welcome them to the show now. Thank you both for joining me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having us on.
So let's kind of kickstart just with can you both introduce yourselves and tell me kind of what your role with Sheffield is? So we'll start with Sarah.
Okay, well, it's not like me normally to be in front of the camera. I'm normally behind the scenes, very much so, because normally I would put Helen or Naomi, for example, going for an interview, and I'd be the person giving them some facts behind them. So I've been a trustee with Hatters since 2009. So being involved in terms of on the social media and doing our partners, just on a voluntary basis, is something I've been very passionate about women in sports. So it's nice to be on here to talk about kind of the challenges and as a club what we've tried to do over the last year.
Brilliant. And Naomi?
Yeah, I was about to say, pretty much if you message any of our social media accounts, Sarah's the person you talk to. That's me. So I'm Naomi Campbell. I'm a player for Sheffield Hatters and have been part of the club since I was 12, so I'm into my 18th year. With Hatters, I've gone up through the junior ranks and obviously played for the senior team for a significant number of years now. Throughout that time, I've had various roles and responsibilities within the club, and now I am co-captain along with Helen, kind of at the senior level as the person who's part of the furniture. But yeah, so I've been a player, like I say, through the club for a long time now.
I mean, obviously, at the minute, coronavirus is kind of the only thing anyone ever talks about. Kind of, how have you both kind of found 10 months, I think we're into it now. I think when it first happened, I thought, a couple of weeks, because I work in a school, so I thought a couple of weeks and then we'll be back after the Easter. And obviously, we're now in January and we're back to remote learning and things. Kind of, Sarah, how have you found lockdowns personally?
For me personally, I've been okay. I mean, to be honest, my world's changed massively. I was actually, although I've been linked with Hatters and still luckily doing social media, you can do that anywhere to an extent. I actually had moved down to London. So I actually relocated back to Sheffield. Probably Hatters may have been a factor. I'd also say my other half as well. But yeah, so I've actually loved being back in the Peak District, seeing friends in Sheffield, and realizing that you can still have building relationships with family more virtually, which is a bit of a strange thing that I don't think we ever really considered that before, because my family are all in London. So it's been a strange time. And then from a Hatters point of view, it's definitely kept me busy. I don't feel like I've been bored twiddling my thumbs with kind of some of the challenges and what we've been trying to do to overcome it. So that's been good.
And Naomi, the last 10 months for you?
Have been very strange, really, because again, I'm a teacher. So in terms of having some of the issues that other people have had or uncertainties, I've not had any of that because obviously I've had a job the entire time for one, which has been a big thing. But with that, it's obviously, being in school, it's come with other challenges, dealing with students who are at home and doing home visits and worrying about mental well-being and trying to teach them virtually and then going back into schools and then not in schools and then back into schools. And so it's been full on, if I'm honest. And we as teachers have had a bashing on like social media in the press and things, but even that's taken its toll on the staff body and things, staff that I work with, and just trying to balance everyone, whilst, like you say, still having that thing in the back of your head as a teacher, like these kids are struggling. Like we have friends and adults who are struggling, but the young people, we forget how big of an impact it is on them just being away from friends or whatever else. So last 10 months for me, the first lockdown, we weren't really sorted in the virtual teaching world yet. So I quite liked it, and I didn't voice that too loudly, but obviously I miss basketball, but the fact that I got to see daylight and not be in a school building however many hours a day, and getting to, like you say, Queenie was saying, like we're very fortunate, we live right by the Peak District, so I spent most of my summer out walking and just reconnecting with things that you didn't really do in the hustle bustle of the quicker life. It was like, actually, even if you slow down, you can still enjoy life, which was something I've never done. So I found it quite strange to begin with, like adjusting to, right, you've not got to fit 20 things in the next 10 hours. Actually, you've got time, you can have breakfast at normal pace and little things. So yeah, no, obviously from a school point of view, it's been very stressful and continues to be, but obviously the basketball side of things has been so up and down, but for the most part I think I've been very fortunate in the situation. I've not had, like I say, I've not had those same job concerns or furlough worries or having to worry about pay bills or whatever, because teachers obviously have been working the entire time, which some people don't know. Schools might be closed, but we still go in to look after the key worker kids. Just getting that out there.
Very true, preach.
Stop saying they're closed for the majority.
So when I started this podcast, I knew I wanted to do something kind of based on the coronavirus, and obviously Sheffield Hatters, it has had a major impact on kind of the club and the kind of program as a whole. Could you just, because also I think the kind of curse of pro sport is that people only see the top team, the WBBL team, then they don't really see all of the amazing work that goes on behind it. So can you give us a little breakdown about kind of the makeup of Sheffield Hatters as a whole?
Yeah. So in terms of Sheffield Hatters, the thing that people never really establish or realise is that we're actually a volunteer-run club. There is not a single member of like our team, the trustees that run it, and then like the team managers that also obviously are fully involved on a team level. None of us get paid, and it is all for the and that's not, you know, across the country. There's a lot, but for the level that we are at, you know, it is quite, you know, when you look at as a trustee, it's gone from being a club that was run on, say, 30k turnover a year, and then now it's near 100k turnover a year as we've got into the WBBL and more expenses and courts and things like that. So the club as a whole has had more and more pressure put on it. And we, in terms of answering your question about how we run, we have the WBBL team normally. We then normally have a Division 2 team, and then we go down in the different age groups. We have also had a Yorkshire League team as well for many years. I mean, that's how I joined the club. I was part of a Yorkshire League team, which is just a bit more women on a casual basis playing, normally due to commitments or things like that. So that's kind of, you know, this year's our 60th anniversary. So we've been doing something right, and something that, you know, even from London, I knew of Sheffield Hatters. They're renowned. They're the first women's club in the country. And actually, I think they're the most successful club, men or women. I think I can say, you know, with over 65 national titles. So for me, the thing that I love about the club is having role models like Naomi that the younger girls aspire to. And I think it's great having Naomi here, who can show as a 12-year-old, under 12, seeing the seniors, and actually that aspires. And a lot of people don't realise, you know, players like Naomi do this for the love. You know, she's committed to the club. She doesn't get paid for the club. You know, the British players, you know, that is something they've got that. We call it the Hatters family for a reason, because it is like a Hatters family. And there's, you know, we do central venue leagues for local Yorkshire teams generally, from like under 14s, under 12s that play. And that's run by the senior team, or like the under 18s, the under 16s, and the WBBL run that. and they get to be seen as role models. So it's a really good setup, and I think it's so established in comparison. Like, I think out of all the WBBL teams, I think Nottingham Wildcats is the only similar in terms of established setup of a junior team. And for me, that's what I love about being involved in the women's sport and seeing the junior girls, and it keeps them committed to playing as well. So for me, it's a great thing to be involved in a great club. But it takes a lot of work and a lot of dedication, specifically from, a handful of people who it's, if we didn't have Betty, who's been retired, and Lorraine, who works part-time, they work for, they put so many hours into this. Lorraine is Betty's daughter. Everyone knows Vanessa and everything she's achieved on the coaching side, but Lorraine and what she does for the development of the club behind the scenes definitely needs the recognition as well, because she sets those junior leagues up. She, organises the team, managers, that type of thing. So, Betty's out there drumming, trying to get grants and funding, and we wouldn't be able to run if it wasn't for those things. I mean, I made a note just to kind of give an idea of some of what we have, grants wise and donations. In 2019 we got 60k, just under 60k, and in 2018 we got about 48k. So we are continually having to raise more money to have a WBBL team, and so that's why with suddenly everything being stopped, it's been a bit more of a challenge.
Yeah, and I think that's, you kind of hit it on the head there with like the grassroots thing. That is what Hatters is about, is the fact that we are that family. Like I've obviously been in the club since I was 12, but I'm not the only one who spends a significant amount of time in the club. And even from when I came in the club when I was 12, there's very few people that have left completely, if that makes sense. Like, we obviously have the Masters team, so a lot of the players that were senior when I first started still around at practice getting the shots up ready for the next Masters tournament or whatever. And even players that have gone back abroad. During the first lockdown we were having like Hatters Zoom quizzes, but it was like ex-players that now live in America and live wherever and have gone to other teams abroad or whatever. So I think that's kind of the nice part of it, is none of it's superficial. Like when we go and help the juniors or whatever, there is that connection there. It is that opening that path, that doorway for, actually, she's just a girl that lives 10 minutes down the road from me. I could be her in 10 years' time. And I think that's so important. Like, yes, it's role models, but it's having role models that you can kind of associate with or compare yourself to. And I think that's something that we often miss. People just look at the senior players and think, oh, I could never get there. And then when they realise that they started where you started, oh, actually, I could. And like I say, I think that's a nice thing, is you do have so many players come through the ranks, and we always have juniors playing up to the WBBL team. So there's always that progression. It's not as though there's ever like a gap. Like, I didn't get to like under 18s and think, oh, well, I've got nowhere to go now because we don't have a senior team, or I've under 16s and the next stop is seniors and I'm not quite ready for that yet, because there's always that next team to play up for. And I think that's what the club does really well. We look each year at like, right, what girls have we got? What can we offer so that every single player is still getting to participate in sport, but not only participate, but compete at the highest level possible. And I think that's what we've always done. And it, like you say, it's great when we see the 8-year-olds come into the under 12 sessions. I'm like, if I'd started when I was 8, I'd be sick. Or whatever. But it's great to see. I think that, like Queenie was saying, obviously we have the WBBL as like the flagship team all the time, but actually a lot of the good stuff that's happening in the club is happening behind doors with all the teams, and fitting out all the sessions in a week is a bit of a jigsaw puzzle. So no, I think that's definitely the good thing about Hatters, because it keeps women in sport. It's not, like I say, there's not that get out, well, there's not a team now, so I'll just stop. There's always something, which has been a big factor for me.
I think you make a good point in terms of, some of our masters, they play for GB 50 plus. We've got 2 that play for the 50 plus team that have, our success in the 90s in particular, where I think we won everything other than 3 different trophies. That's out of 30, I think we won 27 or something ridiculous. They're now playing for GB 50 plus, but then we've also got the I think last year we had the under 16s GB captain for our setup. So people, it's fun, like people aspire to be the best as well, whatever age group you are. But then at the same time, I've always done it more on I enjoy the sport, that type of level, and I don't feel that I can't be part of the club. So I think that's really good.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about obviously the importance of the kind of the junior work, and how important was it when coronavirus kind of really took hold to save those programs?
Massive.
And what did you put in place to do that?
I mean, from a WB, do you mean specifically for the junior side?
Yeah, well, yeah, for the kind of the junior side that we were talking about.
Yeah, I mean, for the junior side, we've really, and I think this is where Lorraine, bless her, has gone up. But, you know, it feels like sometimes the world is working against you, but we're not on our own. Everyone's like that. But we've just been determined we weren't going to let barriers get in the way. So one of the things that we did was we ended up having, when the courts got closed inside, but you could play outside, we ended up running sessions over the summer outside. And we didn't just do one because of like the situation we were in. We had about 4 different sessions. But when I say 4 different sessions, there were multiple sessions in pods of 6 across Sheffield and South Yorkshire. I mean, Naomi, for example, was running a session in Chesterfield, and we've actually managed to get a girl from Chesterfield from those outreach sessions. So it's actually turned in, well done, Naomi. So it's actually turned into,
good. I was like, you need to come to real Hatters sessions when we can go inside.
So it's actually been a benefit in a way, that we had to reinvent ourselves and do that. But that took a lot of admin, trying to work it out. I would say it turned around in a week, which is pretty impressive. And then when we've come back to sessions, then we've had to hold, and then we've done sessions again. We've also done junior leagues, checking out what tier are we, can we run this? We put in place to do 4 tournaments for the juniors because they were missing competitive game. And I think that's when you really develop your skills. But unfortunately, we only got one in December, before it went into the lockdown again. So I think it was November, and then we went into the lockdown. And then obviously we've just had the lockdown happen again a week later. I think this is when it goes virtually, gets put into my remit. We had a suggestion from a mum about having, could one of the seniors talk to our under 12s team? And I was like, well, if we're going to do it for one team, we do it for the club. And actually what we've set up is virtual sessions. So on a Tuesday, Naomi, it's great to have her here because she did a brilliant session on mental, it's like meet the player, and then they give 5 top tips about something. And so we actually talked about mental well-being. I say we, Naomi talked about mental well-being because if you've seen her video recently, she's had a challenging couple of years, and just shows. But you would never have known that if you're in the club. Like, me and Naomi are very good friends. So, and I didn't know even everything that she mentioned on there. She's always got a smile on her face, and you wouldn't know that. And I think that was key to tell the junior players. Like, I approached Naomi and said, would you mind sharing some of this? Because she is the kind of person that keeps it private. But I felt it was important for the juniors to be aware, and she did a great job. We got loads of, positive feedback off the back of it. A lot of parents said, the junior girls appreciated it, and said it showed real strength. And then on a Thursday, we're doing like regular fitness sessions, virtual fitness sessions, a bit of fun, keep the fitness up. So it's a bit different, and we're evolving it as it happens on a weekly basis. So,
I think that was what was really important for us, wasn't it? It's when we had the conversation. It's obviously, yes, we wanted to do the meet the players, just have a bit of a chat with the youngsters, but ultimately, basketball is more than the sport. Like, when I think about how much I've learned through the years of playing basketball, and all the things about being part of a team and discipline and punctuality to sessions, and there's a kind of whole host of things that you get from being part of a team. And I think it was important. And being an athlete, it's not just the physical side of things, it's not just the skill side of things. There's so many more things that come along with that. There is the mental side of it, there is the nutrition side of it, there is the time management side of things when you're a youngster and you suddenly get to GCSEs and A levels and you're trying to train however many times a week and still be successful in school. And I thought it's a good opportunity because when we're playing, we focus on playing. So while we've got this new setup, we just thought, actually, do you know what? It's a good opportunity to educate the youngsters and realise that we are part of a bigger picture. Like, yes, we play basketball and we want to be competitive in basketball, but we also want to develop a group of young ladies who know how to chase their dreams, be successful, work hard, always try their best, speak out when they're struggling, all those other things that is important to teach them. So I think these latest sessions have been a really good way of staying connected and reminding them, like I was saying at the beginning, the great thing about Hatters is we've always kept people in the sport. With the current affair, if you, let's imagine you only came to a session last February for the first time, what is there to keep you thinking, I still want to play basketball? And that's why it's important to get those outdoor sessions, so they were still getting to see that we really love basketball, even if it's slightly different. And like we were saying, get the tournaments up and running and train when they could, and realise that that was a good outlet for them when going back to school was probably quite stressful. And then obviously, like you say, now the leagues are done for the season at the junior level. So what are we doing to make them want to come back in September? What are we doing to keep these young women in sport? And that's so important, because I would hate for this to result in reduced figures in September, not just from us from a like club point of view of having numbers through the door, but from a sport perspective in general and a young girl perspective. There's all these initiatives like This Girl Can or whatever, getting them in, and All Girls or whatever for Basketball England, but ultimately those girls still need to be there. And if you don't speak to them for months on end, then they're not going to be. They're going to take up athletics because they can do that on their own all summer or whatever. So I think that was the real kind of heart behind it, was actually, let's remind each other that we are still a club. We might not all be in that sports all together right now, but we will be. So yeah, that was kind of the motivation behind it, and still exposing them. And I've decided that I'm not joining the fitness sessions anymore because they all beat me.
As we said before, that's the kind of the side of clubs that people don't really see very much, and the kind of the work that goes on behind the scene for, say, the junior levels. Obviously the Hatters family, and it kind of makes a big difference. But I'll take you back to March again, March 2020, so the kind of start of the coronavirus, and we'll focus on the WBBL side of things now. What kind of, can you give me a little time scale about kind of when things happened to do with the WBBL?
Yeah, well, I'll start from obviously a player point of view in March. It was just all very crazy, and I'm sure every team went through a similar thing, whereby we were all starting to watch the news, we were all starting to see these headlines about this thing called coronavirus, and other countries starting to flag up that they might need to go into like a lockdown, and we're thinking, nah, we'll be fine, or whatever, because you do, don't you? You're like, you've never seen anything like it in your life. So we were very much carrying on, like practicing or whatever. And then obviously we have imports, like young ladies from abroad, and a couple of them started to go, my parents are saying I should go home or whatever. Like, what is this really bad? Like, are we worried? And everyone was started to get concerned because there was talks of borders closing and things. But as far at that point, we were like, the league's still going ahead. Like, what's going to happen? We were still rocking up to practice. And so very quickly, obviously, we realised this is not happening. The league stopping. But even when the league stopped, we didn't know, like you were saying with schools, we didn't know whether it was going to be stopped for a few weeks or whether it was going to be stopped for a long time. And for a club like us, sending all your players home on flights, and then if we were going to have to pay for them all to come back again, we might not have been able to do it. But at that point, we had to make the call. It was like, you know what, regardless of whether we can get them back or not, we need to get these young women home. They are humans. They need to be with their families in this time. So very quickly, I remember it was a couple of days, as in, I think 2 of them I didn't even get to like say bye to, because it was, I've got a flight out of here, I need to get down to London tonight to get the flight out first thing tomorrow kind of thing. So there were lots of voice notes going around like, bye, thanks for a great season. And I remember on like the practice a couple of days before, we were just sat in the classroom looking around at each other like, what is going on? And you could see everyone with their own little fears. So I have never experienced a season just end like that. and we had a great group of girls last year, and you're like, no, normally you get to the end of the season, you all get to do your nice farewells and whatever, maybe play a final first. It was just bizarre. It was like, we're at practice one day, the next day, all right, bye, like, don't know when I'll see you again. And obviously at that point, some of them we were thinking we might have seen again in September or whatever, but it was just a case of, like, I've still got some of the players' stuff up in my attic, because they were just taking their one bag home. They didn't have time to like sort through, unpack properly. They're like, can you keep this for next season? I've got foam rollers and all sorts, food blenders, the lot. And I was like, yeah, just give it to me. I'll put it in my car, because it was that quick of a turnaround. So I will return the stuff one day, Rosie, I promise. But yeah, it was, like I say, it was just strange. And obviously we then all just like dispersed off, and I think everyone, like you say, at that point, it wasn't really about basketball. It was just what on earth is going on in the world, and getting people out of there quick. So that was kind of the immediate thing as a club, I remember. And like I say, I'm sure every club went through the same thing, like, let's get our players out of here as safely and as quickly as we can. And that's not as easy said and done. Like, when you've got to sort out transport for these people to airports and whatever else, it takes quite a bit of planning. There was no looking for cheapest flight, it was what fly. So that was the very immediate thing. And then obviously it started to transpire, similar with schools, that this wasn't going to be short term, and at which point the league obviously was cancelled indefinitely. And that was like, oh, okay, no, this is not good. And we'd got lots of things. The biggest thing we'd got coming up was our sports dinner the next month, wasn't it? Like, she's nodding now. This is her territory. So we got our annual sports dinner coming up, which is like one of our biggest fundraisers. It's great. A lot of the referees will know, because we always invite them, and it's just a chance to showcase what it is we do. It's always a fun night. That we get like prizes, and there's an auction, like, donated and things. And one year we had a pair of Anthony Joshua boxing gloves a little bit before he was quite as high profile as he is now or whatever. But
no, he was high profile. He was definitely high profile. I just happened to work at English Institute of Sport, so where GB boxing is working. So I was like, please do me a massive favour.
Yeah, so like, you know what I mean? Like, we have some good prizes and things. So that was a massive fundraiser, and all of a sudden it was like, well, that's not going to be happening. So it was like cancelling venues and things for that. But at this point, I feel like I should hand over, because this is now Queenie's territory. Sarah's Queenie.
No, I mean, to be honest with you, like, I was working, so my job at the time was working for Harlequins Rugby as well. So even I'd actually was in Sheffield. I'd come up to Sheffield with a little bag to go to a Prem Cup final and in Manchester. And then we got called off on like the Friday or the Saturday. So it wasn't just, Hatters that were in this position where suddenly coronavirus was changing, and the amount of money that we weren't alone in that. But I think in terms of, for us, like the sports dinner, we can bring in like £6,000. And when we did fundraising total of 10,000, that's quite a big percentage of that coming in. But we weren't, from a club point of view, we were having some really positive conversations and looking like we were going to get a funder to help us with the next year. So actually that was like, we were worried about the individuals and how was the WBBL going to finish, and it was disappointing because I felt like the team were coming together, we were getting more wins, like, it was our school commitment in terms of going out to schools and coaching was happening, and suddenly we were having to ring schools and say, because it's actually, so Naomi does a great job of showing the players, the juniors, that they can be, you can work it, working full time and playing. But the players that we had come over, part of the way that we can fund them to be in the team is actually doing the outreach as well, so paying them to go into schools, and that helps our outreach program. But our, the British players all work full time as well, so they don't have the manpower to do it. So suddenly we were having our international players going, and obviously the well-being of them was their priority, but then we had this commitment to schools as well, and the outreach we were doing. So it's, it all, as we all know, it escalated very quickly, so it wasn't the end of the world, but it was a fit in terms of for the schools. But we didn't know that we weren't going to just be letting the school down and trying to find how we get coaches in that point of view. So yeah, it was we weren't worried. We didn't think we were worried about the season that we're now in, but we were worried about what does it look like, and we didn't have any money, and were people going to be able to come back if they were going to continue. But we all know how that played out, and unfortunately, due to coronavirus, the potential we had to have funding for this season that we're now in went. So we were very much on the back foot from us being like, oh, we're not going to have the fundraising for the dinner, but we should be okay. Actually, we're now massively down on our money. We were on the back foot because we've not been able to prepare and plan, get some sort of a plan in place. So we were chasing before the beginning of this WBBL season to get the money, as being one of the first clubs to do like the crowdfunder. I know that Newcastle did a great job, great campaign, and we tried to follow the route, similar route, but just to even get a little bit towards what we needed.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. Like you say, it's when you contemplate how much money is required these days in WBBL. Like I say, I've been in the club for a long time now, and it went from there's always been imports. Even when we were Division 1 women, not WBBL. We've always had imports, but we've also had two other factors that have really helped us. We've had a key group of British players who are free. Who obviously got to a point in their career. We had a really good core for a number of years when I was coming up, who retired to have babies. A couple have made a comeback since, but obviously that's inevitable in women's sport at some point. And we also were quite lucky that we ended up getting some other imports, but not from us recruiting as such. They just happened to be moving to Sheffield for work, or they happened to be doing a master's programme and would contact us and say, look, can we come play? So the calibre of import has had to improve due to the way the league's going, which is great. The league's going in a good direction, but it's been a case of, to get the talent in, it's more expensive. And now we're in a situation where some of our juniors, like myself and Helen or whatever, stayed in the club from like a young age, but that we didn't go to the States or whatever. We didn't go to these academies. We didn't, because for whatever reason, obviously the States was there, but for whatever reason, whereas now there is so much more exposure out there. There's a lot more education around those next steps for junior players. So we're finding increasingly, we do a great job at the grassroots programme, we get these players, but how many of them, or me, in 10 years' time, actually they might not be, because if they go to America and then go to Europe or whatever, we've got a group now who are, obviously we've had one go to Ipswich this year to the academy, we've had people go to Myerscough Academy or whatever, which is great for those, and like as I always say it, like if I'd had those chances when I was that age, and to play basketball every single day and to be in a like-minded situation at school or whatever, would I have taken it? Very possibly. So I think that's the situation we're in terms of, I mean, people who sit in the WBL committee meetings will know that this year isn't the first time we've talked about money issues. Like Queenie started with saying, we're a fully volunteer-run club. We don't have our own court. We pay court hire. Or whatever, which is a massive thing. Accommodation wise, we don't have a university accommodation to put them in. We're not supported in that sense by unis. So all of a sudden, the amount of money we have to generate from like you say, fundraising and from sponsorships, and we've got a few very loyal sponsors who have sponsored us for years, but equally the amount of money they sponsor us is similar to what we used to require, and we can't expect businesses to suddenly just kind of magic money out of thin air, particularly in the current climate. I'm sure a lot of teams have experienced the difficulty of getting new sponsorships and new funding this year, because every business isn't trying to get money out there, and I'm sure particularly this year with lack of crowds, the incentive to have your name on someone's kit, it isn't quite the same, and things like that. So yeah, I definitely think like you're saying, the way the league's moving has made it increasingly hard for us over the years. And there's been many a year. I remember, I think it was the season before last, I was sat in a committee meeting. My mum's vice chair, so I often get roped in. And we were talking about, can we run a WBBL team? It was, we're this many £1,000 short, and we're in August. we need players coming through the doors in however many weeks, and we currently can't afford to pay for accommodation. What are we going to do? Kind of thing. Relying on generous donations and those kind of things. So, like I say, this year, obviously the coronavirus just amplified everything for us, and it's hard in terms of what's your alternative. Where do you go? It's not like we don't try, and like we said, Betty spends hours and hours applying for grants and things, and we get a lot through. But to be competitive in the WBBL, it costs money these days. And it's great when you get to play in it because it's the level of competition is so much higher. But it's growing and growing and growing. And we're working with the same kind of infrastructure that we've always had. And that's quite difficult.
I think that's something that we're looking to change, though, in terms of where our direction is. And actually, that's the thing is with having this sabbatical, all the energy we put in to keep it going that year and the fundraising that happens, hopefully taking this year step out, as it were, has given us, I'm very much concentrating, with Betty is very much leading it. What is a stable way that we can go moving forward? You look at Newcastle again as an example, with that, Nottingham as an example, as they run themselves as a business, and they do well with it, and they're able
with
to
their own arena,
their own courts, and with a lot of the majority of the other WBBL teams are given support on the court, so they're not even having to pay, and that is one of our biggest expenditures, along with housing the players. It's just that they're the things that we need to kind of find a way around it and are moving forward, rather than this money's going to get us through this year, how are we going to do it? And that's definitely something we're looking at, but it's hard when you're competing against other WBBL teams that are getting lots of support from universities. Helen and Uni of Sheffield absolutely recognise what we do, and that's great, but they don't give us the financial support. We've helped Helen win a Bucks, but then the next year we lost our funding from them, or the scholarships that we were getting from them. So that's not against them. They're in their positions and they've got their challenges and changes of directions. But when other WBBL teams are getting increasing support, given courts, given more scholarships, given actual people to run the WBBL team as part of their existing role and being paid for it, rather than someone who's trying to do a full-time job and in the evening sending emails at late at night, like myself or Lorraine, who's doing that as well. It's a different game, and the level playing field has completely changed. And
even Vanessa, the amount of people I think don't realise Vanessa, as always, when she's coached, had a full-time job alongside it. Like, she was a teacher as well. She worked in a college. It wasn't her full-time job. She wasn't getting paid or whatever. And I think that, like I say,
that about her not being paid. That's the crazy thing. People don't realise that.
Yeah, that's what I mean. So I think it's really hard to understand like where we're coming from. It's not so, oh well, we could just save a bit of money here or a bit of money there. Like, no one's getting any money to save in the first place. And equally, those other things you're talking about take time. And when it's all volunteers doing that stuff, it's hard, but it doesn't really stop people trying. I think that's the great thing about Hatters, is we do have a committee and lots of volunteers surrounding that committee who are always ready to step up and say, oh well, I can do that, or I'll have a go at that, or whatever. But that's exactly what it is. Sometimes it's I'll try. But no, I think, like we said, this year hopefully is giving us a chance to get ourselves ready for next year.
I was going to ask, kind of, so everything's still unknown, isn't it? We're still kind of like, when will the vaccine take effect to have people back in arenas and all that sort of thing? But kind of, what are the future plans? What are the kind of aims let's talk about the WBBL team. What are the aims to, when to come back, kind of thing?
Well, we've been very lucky in the sense the league has held our spot for us. That was a big thing for us as a club. Like I say, we've always competed at that top level. This is the first year we've not had a team competing at the highest level possible. and we've got players who are still wanting to come back and things. So I know that, like you say, behind the scenes, people are working to try and get that extra funding and whatever else. It's the same old story in the current climate. How much of success we're having with that is a different question. But I know we're certainly not like sat here twiddling our thumbs thinking maybe it'll just happen. There's lots and lots of work going on, and that's definitely still the aim and the ambition, because that's where we want to be, and that's where we've always been. And it is a crucial part of, like I was saying, the entire programme. Yes, the junior programme could run as it kind of has this year without us. It's not as though they rely on us financially or anything like that. It is just a case of it gives them something to aspire to. So I think that's obviously where, from my point of view, I still just have everything crossed. trying to stay some kind of shape so that I can keep up with the WBBL next year.
Well, the recruitment, it's not even just with the WBBL, it would be the recruitment, which would be a massive loss that we get through going into schools. So the junior side would be affected. We will always continue doing the junior side. There is that, as long as there's the need, I'm saying that we're doing all these virtual fitness sessions, but it's making sure every age group is completely engaged in that as well. The really little ones massively are engaged in it. And I would say the older ones we've got to make sure that we're engaging every age level, so there isn't an age level that drops off. That's a priority for us as a club. And having a WBBL team for next year is a priority for us. We've lost players in terms of that have gone, Naomi and Helen and Georgia, for example, are 3 examples of players that have grown up through the club. Georgia was coming back having played in the US and was going to play for us. They even all 3 were willing to do a Division 2 team for this season, because with the hope we'd have a WBL and keeping that kind of, and developing the Division 2 to like having more key players as well that we can use for WBBL. But actually then, and unfortunately, we did even ask Basketball England, could we be Division 1 so that we can still continue to play, because we've got players that want to play. And actually that wasn't, Basketball England wouldn't allow that. So we then had to disband a talented group of women who some aren't playing now, which for me is criminal that they're in could there have been something done? But then we've also lost players that, Georgia's now in Spain, Naomi's in Nottingham, and Helen's playing in Manchester. Obviously now everything's on hold, but that's with hopefully they will come back. And, we've even got Vanessa, who's gone to Austria. Hopefully, if we have a WBBL team, I believe that they are all passionate about coming back, and that it's great that they're continuing to play. And I think this in particular is a great opportunity for Vanessa, for her to actually get paid for the skills that she's got. She's been a GB, she's won silver Commonwealth. People forget this. She's helped as assistant coach for the GB Commonwealth Games, and she doesn't get paid. In other sports that just wouldn't happen. But it's exciting also to see that the BBL is on Sky, and will that give us help us with the platform of raising the sport? So we definitely want to be involved in the WBBL next year, and we don't want it to be, we've just scraped enough money. We've got a plan, we're moving forward, but that takes a lot of work, and now we've got the time, we're putting that in. But also businesses we're approaching, organisations, they're also making redundancies and making cutbacks. So it is a difficult fight, and it is a difficult challenge. But also a lot of people are passionate about women's sport, diversity. Basketball is the second most popular team sport. We need to maximise this. We know the facts. We need organisations to not just plump money into football. It's just a different, if you really, businesses really believe what they're saying and they're not just doing it, then they need to put the money where their mouth is, rather than just say, you're doing a great job, keep up the great work. They actually need to give us money. And that's what is the thing that I find hard. Every interview I'm involved in with players involved, they get asked, what they need, could they do more? We need more time, as in staff that would help go and get sponsorship that aren't doing a full-time job. and we need more money. They're the two things. And unfortunately, without the time, it's hard to get the money. And that's the challenge that we have. But people have done it. We've got people that have successfully done it as a BBL team and a WBBL team. So for us to aspire to it, that isn't just about, we're building on those relationships with the university, seeing how they can support us, you know, looking at plans in the future. There is the willing there. We just need to make it happen. And we need, you know, we can't say it is a bit of fingers crossed, but it is also a lot of work that we're, in particular Betty, and, you know, is putting in.
Well, I think I speak for the whole league, and we've got our fingers crossed as well for for next year. It's been a fascinating conversation with you both, and I really appreciate you coming on. Just so we can learn more about Sheffield and kind of the struggles and the kind of passion that you both have for the club. So it's been absolutely fascinating. So thank you very much.
No,
thank you ever so much for having us on. I look forward to seeing the rest of these interviews going forward.
Wow, an absolutely fascinating interview there with Sarah McQueen and Naomi Campbell. Next for you, another member of the Hatters family, Sheffield royalty. I'd love to introduce you to Helen, Naylor. Well, thank you for joining me.
You're welcome.
So this episode of the podcast, I talked to Sarah McQueen and Naomi Campbell from obviously Sheffield Hatters, some people you'll know very well. And we talked about the effect of kind of the coronavirus outbreak on Sheffield Hatters as a club, from junior levels all the way through to the WBBL team. Just want to take you back to kind of March time last year. How did you feel when kind of seasons were postponed, and how did you feel?
Well, it was really strange because obviously I was pregnant and I just finished playing in January.
Right.
So then obviously we were hearing rumblings about coronavirus, but for ages nobody really, it wasn't really in the UK, was it? It was just these things happening elsewhere in the world. And then I think it was sort of like beginning of March time maybe, where people were starting to get a little bit worried about it. And I know our players that were here from other countries were sort of like, what's happening? Is the league going to continue? And as it got closer to that sort of week where things did shut down, everybody was sort of panicking. We had one girl leave because, well, right, you know, you don't know what's going to happen, do you? And I think everybody was getting really worried. And then I remember there was something put out on Twitter about the league being shut down, and we all went to practice that night, and Vanessa told us that it was being postponed at that point. And then obviously I think it was a week or two later that they put out that the women's league was going to be cancelled. So it was I mean, obviously I'd stopped playing, but I know for everybody else we'd sort of just starting to gain momentum again, and starting to really gel and things like that. And it was just really disappointing for everybody, but absolutely the right decision at the time, I think, with, you know, what was going on. Then obviously the men's got cancelled later as well, didn't it? So it's just a bit of a rubbish way to end the season, and especially like we had some girls who haven't played again since then, and it's just not a great way to even like end your basketball career. There was one girl that was finishing up playing, so just disappointing, but nothing we could have done about it.
Naomi was saying that she's got like stuff in her loft from players who just had to kind of make a quick dash to get back home, and different things like that.
Yeah.
So as we said before, it's just a crazy kind of set of circumstances this last year.
I think a lot of our players got home before. I know they would have still let Americans back in and stuff, but like the Americans that were going back when Trump was closing the borders, it was a little bit before that. Yeah. So I know then there was like the final still got played, didn't it, on the Sunday?
Yeah, the final, yeah.
And then that's when there was like a mad rush for people to get home. But a couple of my friends were sort of playing in Europe and things like that, and they literally were like had to make a decision if they were going to leave and if they were going to be allowed back in the country. And so it was a very crazy time.
So we went into lockdown in March. How have you? I think it was 10 months ago or something. How have you found the last 10 months?
Just a world, just crazy, really. Like, you know, it almost feels like Groundhog Day every day, doesn't it? Like, especially because I'm not working at the minute. In March, when we went into the proper lockdown, I was pregnant but still working. Right. So I worked until June, and then gave birth in June. So from March till June, I was just working from home every day, and just every morning getting up, going and sitting at my kitchen table, logging onto my laptop and just sitting there in the same spot every day from like March till June. And I'm moaning about that, but a lot of my colleagues are still there now, like still in the same spot, working from the same place. But it was a bit of a scary time because maternity services were like not letting anybody go to like any appointments, so you had to go everywhere by yourself, and for a couple of weeks you had to give birth by yourself. You weren't allowed to take a birthing partner with you. So luckily, I think it was like a week or two before I gave birth, they'd said that you could take somebody in with you. And then after that, obviously, I've had a new baby to look after, so I wasn't really going anywhere anyway after June. For the first couple of months, so I was at home, and my mum and sister were sort of helping me out. And then started training and playing basketball again in September, I think. At first with the Hatters, I was going to play for their Division 2 team, and then obviously that got shut down and we went back into another 2 lockdowns. So yeah, I think it's just difficult, isn't it, for everybody? And I think everybody's sort of, you're just doing the same things day in, day out. So I'm like, we do some baking, we'd go for like a walk, and then it just feels very monotonous.
New baby, probably whirlwind's probably the best word to describe how the last 10 months have been then.
Yeah.
So you mentioned Sheffield there. How long have you been kind of associated with Sheffield? And when I talked to Naomi and when I talked to Sarah, the passion for Sheffield really kind of came through with everything they were saying. So what does it mean to you, and how long have you been involved in Sheffield?
So I went to play at Sheffield. I went to uni in Leeds, and my sister came home from university. She was at university in Nottingham. And we wanted to play for a new team. So we both went to Sheffield at the same time. So it was when I was 18. So about 15, 16 years ago. And I've been there ever since. And my sister's been there ever since, obviously, came and went to have children. So yeah, very, very long time that I've been there. And, you know, I just feel like I'm part of the Hatters family. And I'm sure Naomi and Sarah probably said the same thing. So I absolutely love playing there. It's a really good club atmosphere, and you know, like a one big family. That's what it's like.
The Hatters family was mentioned a lot. That term. Yeah. So you started playing kind of September time after giving birth. So you said with the Hatters. Then how did the move to Manchester come around?
So there was a couple of us that were sort of going to play in the WBBL for Sheffield this year, but obviously we had a team, then didn't have a team, and then we had a team again, didn't have a team, and things were very touch and go. And then obviously the club decided that we didn't have the funds, we couldn't raise enough money in time, and we sadly had to pull out of the WBBL. So then we were going to play in Division 2, and there was like me, Naomi, Georgia, and then a lot of the girls that played Division 2 or under 18s last year. And then with that not being an elite sort of classed as elite Division 2, when the second lockdown got announced, it was announced that had to shut down. So at one point we started training in bubbles of 6, so you could have 6 at one end, 6 at the other end. And we started saying, oh, well, maybe after this lockdown, the season will start. And then obviously it started looking worse. And towards Christmas, things looked like they were going downhill. So we made a decision. I think actually we had to stop training at that point. I'm sure we weren't even allowed to train in bubbles of 6. So obviously I've just gotten back into playing and training again, and was looking forward to playing the season in some capacity. And that was gone again. So I was actually just going to go and train at Manchester just once a week, just to sort of keep myself fit and or try and get fit again, should I say, keep myself, and just, you know, keep playing until next season, where hopefully the Hatters can get back into the WBBL. So I contacted Jed, who is one of the assistant coaches there, and he used to be the assistant coach at Sheffield. and just asked if I could go over to train. So I went over in, I want to say it was like end of October time, maybe.
Nice.
And then everyone was like, are you going to play? And I was like, no, I'm not really thinking of playing. Like, it's a big commitment. I've just had a baby. It's quite far to travel. So it's like about an hour and a half from where I live.
Nice.
And then they just taught me into it after a couple of weeks. So now I go over more often and obviously playing as well. So that's just how it came about. I just wanted to keep playing, and obviously there was Manchester, Nottingham, or Leicester that are sort of the closest clubs to me. So yeah.
Yeah. So what's it been like playing this season? Because obviously Durham are playing their first game of the season today. Obviously coming up towards the end of January.
Yeah.
Some teams started back in October, November time. So what's it been like playing?
It's been a strange season. It's not been normal, and I think a lot of games, more so in the last couple of weeks, have sort of got postponed, or I kind of think there was a few cancelled in the early days because of people testing positive or isolation and various things like that. And like you say, I think Edinburgh were late to start, weren't they? Durham, Essex. So it's been very strange, and it's weird playing with no fans. There's minimal people in the arenas, but I think everybody's just happy to be having a season at all during the current times. And more recently, sort of more teams have started testing and things like that. So we're just all trying to stay safe and do what we can. There's lots of different protocols at practice, and with changing the balls, cleaning the balls, masks, cleaning your hands in between plays, and all sorts of things like that we had to get used to start with. But it's just sort of, it's just become normal now. Every time you have a break, that you're gonna get some hand gel squirted on you, and but yeah, it's very, very different to a usual season.
And obviously, in the last few weeks, Sevenoaks and Manchester kind of made that decision to kind of suspend their games until after the international break. How did the discussions and how did that decision come around?
I think there was sort of a players' meeting where a lot of the captains or one representative from each team went and had a chat. I don't know the ins and outs of that meeting or what happened, but people were sort of just saying, and I think it was after Christmas, and it was when we were going into the next lockdown. The rate of the virus had gone up quite a lot, and people were sort of asking, is the league going to continue at this point, or are we going to shut down again? And once that meeting had happened, we then had a meeting as a team and sort of put forward what we would want in terms of. So one of the things that came out of that is we're now having testing within the Mystics a couple of times a week. So we all said we would want some testing, and thankfully the clubs made that happen. A couple of other clubs are the same, and I think it was just a general consensus within the team. We've got a couple of players that, and players, coaches that, got different situations in terms of jobs. Some players work for the NHS. When I go back to work, I work on the front line in social care. Obviously got a young baby. Georgia's got diabetes, which I know is widely known. So it's just lots of different considerations like that. And we felt at that time, very similar to Sevenoaks, that the rates of infection were just so high that we wanted to wait a couple of weeks to implement testing and have various discussions around the league and make sure that all the protocols that were meant to be in place were being strictly stuck to by all the different teams. We wanted to see different documents and things like that. I don't know if we'll be in a different position by February in terms of we will start playing again, but in terms of rates of infection and things like that, hopefully with the lockdown, things will start to come down again. But I think, sort of consensus around the team was we felt a bit uneasy playing, with those rates so high. We actually expected a few more teams to have that stance, but obviously it was only us under Sevenoaks when that came out. So, it's up to individual players, and every team's got players in different situations. Some of them are able to bubble a bit more, and I don't know, a lot of players live together in, I don't know, teams like Leicester if they're at uni and things like that. whereas we've all got very separate lives and families and things like that. So that's sort of how it came about.
Yeah, I talked to Renee from Seven Oaks about a couple of weeks back, and she said the same.
Yeah.
NHS workers, teachers, a lot of kind of different circumstances, isn't it? And I guess it's what fits for that group of players at the time. So let's move on. What are kind of your plans for the future then? So obviously this year has been very, very different, but what are you looking at in the near future for yourself?
Within basketball?
Yeah.
Well, obviously I'm coming towards the end of my playing career. I'm 33, am I? Yeah, 33.
Oh, plenty of time left.
Oh, no, I'm not sure. I'm not sure how much longer the knees can last. But no, I'm coming towards the end of my playing career. So if Sheffield have a team next season, I will definitely go back there and play if they want me. If they don't, I'm not sure whether I will play again or I don't know. So I'm just hoping that they do have a team and that I can. The plan was to keep playing until I was 35, and then I'd be the right age to play in the Masters tournaments, and I could stop playing. So I've still got somewhere else to play. That'll be another 2 seasons. So I'm hoping to play another season or 2. Obviously, it'll depend on things with my daughter and Sheffield and the teams and how that all works out. But I'm hoping to continue playing for a little bit longer.
Brilliant. As I said before, I really appreciate you joining me. It's been fascinating to hear your thoughts on this season and kind of moving forward. So thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Absolutely brilliant there from Helen to get an insight into this season as a WBBL player and what it's like to play in the current conditions and obviously that Sheffield link as well. Well, I'm afraid that's all we've got time for today on episode 2 of the WBBL review. Just remember, if you've enjoyed this episode, give it a like, give it a share, let everyone know about it, follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, subscribe on YouTube. It would be greatly appreciated. Keep your eyes open in a week or two's time for episode 3 as we talk to some of the GB stars from the WBBL.